So I'm not like a firm believer in the 10,000 hours rule, because I don't think that all hours are created equal. Like there are a lot of guys who, when I moved to Huntington Beach, was when I first moved to California in September of 2016. There were guys there who are still the exact same players they were when I moved here, despite the fact that they've probably put in close to the same amount of hours. But the hours that I've put in, for the most part, have been dedicated, focused, like rep based. And, you can get better just going out and scrimmaging every day. You'll get a lot of cool reps that way. But my kind of rep that I love, that I noticed, like, this is how I got better at golf. If I wanted to get better at chipping, I wasn't going to go play 18 holes and just hope that every now and then I would get better at chipping. Like, I would just go to the putting green and chip 1,000 balls.
What's up and welcome to the Learn Beach Volleyball Fast podcast, the podcast that is designed to help you move forward in your beach volleyball career faster. I'm Alex, I'm the host of the show, and in this episode I'm going to have my first interview with a currently active player. Travis, with this last name that a lot of people make mistakes on, I think it's Mewhirter, is a currently active FIVB and AVP tour player, and he's also one of the two co-hosts of the Sandcast podcast, which makes him a really interesting person to interview because he both takes lessons from his own life and own career, but also from these hundreds of great volleyball minds that he has gotten to interview on his podcast. So I'm really happy to be able to share this nice little chat we had with you guys. We talked about all sorts of things, about blocking, some attacking, some vision, some passing, some just how to learn the sport faster and how to practice it on your own and whatnot. We touched a lot of topics. I found it very insightful and interesting to have this chat with him. I hope you find something similar by listening to it. All right, let's get started.
So we're rolling, I guess.
All right.
I thought about today about this episode, and I realized something, that you're probably the guy in the world that's featured in some way in the most beach volleyball podcast episodes ever.
Me, well, I think so. Kevin Barnett, he did the net live for like 10 years, but that's kind of indoor. It wasn't totally beach. So I mean, you might be right. So Barnett, he did the net live for 10 years. Me and Tri Bourne are coming up on 4 years this October for Sandcast. So. And plus, like, kind of doing random episodes here and there. So yeah, I mean, you might be right. I might be the world leader.
I feel like you've been in more episodes than Tri because he's been traveling, right?
Yeah. So I've definitely done more Sandcast than Tri, especially because like when he's traveling and like especially during Olympic qualification period, like the last thing I want to do is bother him and be like, hey, bro, like I know you play Russia tomorrow. And it's pretty important, but I'm going to need you to record a podcast with me, and so I'm playing in like little 1-stars, which are not nearly as important or stressful. And so I do my best to take the podcast reins when he's doing his thing. So yeah, I've been in a couple more than Tri has with Sandcast. I think we've done like 210 maybe. And he's probably missed 10 to 15 just because playing in big events that I just like want to let him focus and do his thing, and then when he plays better, it adds more value to the podcast. So it's kind of a win-win.
That's true.
Yeah. Get a better podcast and gets better results, and boom, there it is.
Gotta let him do his job. How many other? I heard you on this Option podcast, but have you been interviewed in many others?
I was on the Option. I've been on the net live, but Kevin Barnett and DJ Rouchet, they were the ones who ran it. They stopped doing the net live like a year and a half ago. And then I was on this podcast called the Underdog Podcast. And that was after my first book came out. That's not a beach volleyball podcast. It just kind of gets like guys' stories who are like weirdly successful in industries they don't really belong in, you know. And he was like, guys like one-legged amputees from like the Navy SEALs and stuff, and he was like, you're a writer from Maryland and you're succeeding in beach volleyball, like you're kind of an underdog. It's like, I don't know if I belong with these guys, but I'll come on your podcast, you know. So it was fun. I've been on a few, but there really just aren't many beach volleyball podcasts, although Coach Your Brains Out is fantastic. Not totally like beach centric. I've been on that twice, I think. And Billy and John, such good dudes and like so great for the game. And I love those guys. And so it's always fun. Anytime I get to chat and converse with them, you just come back a better person.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you know them in person? They live close to you, or?
Yeah. So John lives probably like half an hour away. Billy lives in Idaho right now. But I train with them when they're in town. I try to train with them like once or twice a week, just because John's one of my favorite coaches to work with. And of course, like we're all nerds. So like anytime we have a practice, like we just talk about like what books are we reading, like what are we writing about, and like what are we podcasting about. It's always a blast talking to those guys because we're so like-minded. And Billy and John are like the exact same person. Like you'd think they were brothers if you didn't know any better.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So I mean, obviously, I'm stoked for this episode. You're a good guest. I wrote here that you, just for the people that don't know, I guess most people will know who you are that are listening to this. But I mean, you played the World Tour. You played the AVP a few times.
Yeah.
And you're the host of Sandcast, which is the biggest beach volleyball podcast there is.
Yeah.
You've wrote some beach volleyball books, which is amazing. Wrote a lot of articles. Also, you started beach volleyball late.
Yeah.
Which I also did, which I'm super stoked to dig into. And I also need to listen to that that Underdog podcast. That sounds amazing.
Yeah. It's but when did you start playing?
When I was 24.
Okay, so we started playing at the same age then. And how old are you now?
32, born 89. What about you?
Okay. So I'm 30 right now. So you got me by a little bit, but I actually turn 31 next Sunday. So 31's right around the corner for me. So you're only 1 year older. So our beach volleyball journeys are about the same timeline.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's cool. So let's dig into that. What's your background? Did you play golf?
Yeah, so my background, I grew up in this like pretty small farm town in Northwest Maryland. It's like half an hour northwest of Baltimore. And so it's like the town population is like 6,000 people. We have like more livestock and horses and cows than we do like actual human beings. And it's like there's not really a whole lot to do except play sports. And my mom and dad were both athletes growing up. My dad played quarterback in college. My mom played indoor volleyball in college, I think for a year or two before her knees gave out. And so we were just like a sporting family. You know, I have two brothers. And so when we weren't playing organized sports, we were just playing like kind of the made up games that kids do. You know, we had home run derbies in our cul-de-sac, and we would play like 2-on-2 basketball in our driveway. So I grew up playing everything under the sun. I played baseball up through 8th grade. I played basketball up through college. Played golf. And golf was actually probably my best sport that I played. I didn't play in college, but I played at a pretty high level throughout college when I would go home, because I worked at golf courses from 8th grade through my senior year of college. I swam club in college. I played a little bit of tennis. I mean, I ran a lot of cross country and track. It was pretty much everything. And that's a childhood that like I cannot recommend enough. Like I absolutely loved it. And, you know, I think that one of the reasons that I still love beach volleyball as much as I do. And one of the reasons that I was able to pick it up a little quicker than most people might expect is because I had a background in all various different sports. And so there's no movement that I haven't done. You know, I have the lateral movement and conditioning from soccer. You know, I have the vertical and basic defense from basketball. Baseball, there's your arm swing. You know, everything just leads and beach volleyball is like the most athletic game you can play. You have to do everything. And so just having this background in all these different sports, it helped me pick it up so much faster. And because I picked it up so late, like I'm not even close to getting burned out. I picked up at 24, so it's just like still this brand new thing for me, and like with golf, by the time I was a senior in college, it's like, I don't want to look at one more 4-foot slider putt, and with basketball, I got burned out at gyms, and with beach, it's everything. I'm still like such a novice, and everything's so new and fun and novel that it's such a blast. And so I wouldn't trade it. Like sometimes I feel like I wish I had a little bit more of a foundation, either from indoor, but I also like don't think I'd be where I am if I didn't. So I don't think I'd trade it for the world. I loved it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It also gives you like, I feel like you're looking at the whole sport from like different eyes than maybe people that played in their childhood, like in different ways probably, but it's like you come into it and you're like, oh, this is interesting. Well, some people are already like, oh, this is boring. This is what it is.
I think one of the cool things about the way that I came into the sport is that because I didn't have any of the training or anything, I really had to engage every single aspect of the game to become successful at it. So I've watched more film than like and Try's been playing his whole life just because I needed to. Like I needed to get the mental side, this strategy side. Like I needed to learn how to do all these things from a strategy and mental perspective before I could do that physically, because all the physical stuff takes time. But mentally, there's no limit to how many matches a day you can watch and how much you can study other players and figure out the game. So I just like have nerded out so hard these past 6 years to figure out like, how do I play this game at the highest level possible? And now the physical side is beginning to catch up with the mental, it's been an exciting kind of confluence this year.
Okay, what do you mean with that?
Well, so like mentally, I would watch Try's games, for example, and I would see the things that I would want to do and I would need to do to perform at a high level, but physically I just wasn't there yet. My arm swing, I couldn't hit a ball quite that hard because the timing was a little bit off, or I couldn't make these shifty little block moves that he was doing. But I knew that was an aspect of the game I needed to get to, and now physically I'm starting to be able to make those moves, and I'm starting to have a better feel and understanding of the game, because so much of what you have to do on the court, it moves so fast that it has to become instinctual. And now physically it's getting to that instinctual point just from getting all the reps in, where even if I'm blocking line, if I see him swinging angle, I'll just make that move because now I've seen it in my head so many times and I give myself the freedom to make it. So it's been fun to see the physical nature of the game start to meet where mentally I know it needs to be to perform at a high level and beat the highest level teams.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. Does that just come with time for you, or did you? What's been your strategy in a sense?
It's a good question. I think so. I'm not like a firm believer in the 10,000 hours rule, because I don't think that all hours are created equal. Like there are a lot of guys who, when I moved to Huntington Beach, was when I first moved to California in September of 2016. There were guys there who are still the exact same players they were when I moved here, despite the fact that they've probably put in close to the same amount of hours. But the hours that I've put in, for the most part, have been dedicated, focused, like rep based. And, you can get better just going out and scrimmaging every day. You'll get a lot of cool reps that way. But my kind of rep that I love, that I noticed, like, this is how I got better at golf. If I wanted to get better at chipping, I wasn't going to go play 18 holes and just hope that every now and then I would get better at chipping. Like I would just go to the putting green and chip 1,000 balls. And that's how I am. I stunk at passing for the first bit. So I would only do 3-person practices. We'd have a passer, a server, and a catcher. And we just do that for like 2 hours. We just serve 20 balls, pass, or serve, pass, catch, 20 balls, rotate, pass all 4 corners. And then you do it again and you'd set. And so I expedited the process, I think, by making the hours so much more valuable. And that's something that I listened to a lot of podcasts, and a couple of the ones of my favorite ones I've listened to were with Kobe Bryant, and he looked at basketball just like a math problem. So when he was in high school, he wasn't that great as a freshman, He's like, all right, well, if I'm shooting 1,000 shots a day and I'm doing that 6 days a week, and this guy who's better than me is shooting 500 shots a day, only 3 days a week, then it's going to take me X amount of days to catch him. And it's going to take me X amount of days to be twice as good as he is. So Kobe's like, so in 3 years, basically, if I win the math problem of putting in more quality reps than he does, then I'm inevitably going to become better. It's just kind of the way sports works. And some guys obviously are a little bit more genetically gifted and whatnot, but you control what you control, which is if I put in more reps and more dedication to this skill than that guy, then I should be better at it. And so that's kind of the way I looked at beach volleyball, where if I handset 600 balls while I'm watching a movie, then eventually I'm just going to be one of the best hand setters on the beach. Or if I pass, you can kind of extrapolate it to whatever skill you want to work on, and eventually it's going to pay off. So I think that how I expedited the process was just creating the most value out of every hour I could, and still trying to do that.
Yeah, that sounds like something I've been trying to do also. For me, it's funny. My background is in skateboarding and snowboarding, but especially as a kid, I would spend hours and hours and hours just alone on the backyard, like trying the same trick just over and over again. Where you become, you can be very lonely, but you have a fucking blast of the time. And it's funny because in beach volleyball, I see that people don't have this upbringing. They feel like you can't go practice alone. Like that's weird. It's just only weirdos do that or whatever. Or you can't, like, it gets boring for people to do the same thing too many times. But like for me, it's been the most natural thing to every now and then just be the lonely nerd that goes and goes and tries stuff.
Like, that's one of my things, is that when I moved to California, everybody was like, oh, beach is weird because it's different from other sports because you can't train by yourself. I was like, what are you talking about? You can get a bucket ball and you can set yourself and hit 20 high line shots from the left. Like, it's no different than shooting hoops. It's no different than going to the range and beating balls for an hour. In a way, like, that kind of stuff is meditative for me, because I'm like an introvert to the core. So like, I recharge by being by myself. And that's why I love swimming, because swimming, like, people literally cannot talk to you. Like, you're underwater, like, they can't talk to you down there. And so, like, that's what some of my favorite practices are, when I just go out by myself with a cart of balls at sunset, and I just like hit high line shots and then hit cut shots, and hit jump serves and all these things you can do by yourself, and just like, it pays off fast.
Yeah. I like the music in my ears. Throw a ball into the floor and then handset it into a basketball hoop. That's meditation for me.
Great one.
Yeah.
So when I was a member at 24 Fitness in LA, which I stopped being because my wife and I, we built a gym like right out in our yard over there. But when I was a member there, I would do like a half an hour warm up where I would serve a ball from the 3-point line, hit the backboard, and then have to pass it into the hoop. And it was awesome. I would do that for like half an hour, and it was so great. And I probably passed like thousands of balls just warming up to go lift that way. It was amazing.
That's a good one. Yeah, because it also makes lifting more fun, because you get to do some reaction to the ball and whatnot. Like, it just gets your brain firing.
Yeah, exactly.
So what goes on in your head if you do 100 passes in a row? Is there some sort of mental process that goes on in your head? Like, are you thinking about things? Is it different from practice session to another? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So every practice will be a little bit different what the focus is. I'm a big fan of Gina Urango and Jeremy Casebeer. They kind of espouse this idea that you should never go into practice with more than 3 things to work on. Because beyond that, now you're just getting a little bit too scattered, and you're not really going to make any big strides in any category. So if you have 3 focuses every practice, you can really hone in and improve each of those and focus on each of those. So with passing in particular, one of my biggest focuses, and I remember working on this specifically before AVP Austin of 2018, because the tournament before that, I had shanked a couple passes in the final round of the Huntington qualifier in the third set. And I was like, I can't let that happen. So Austin was 2 weeks later. And my big thing, actually, this is a John Mayer kind of principle, is to freeze your platform on your pass. And so every single passing rep that I did, I just made sure to hold it for like 2 seconds after I passed and just freeze it wherever it was. And so that was my focus then. And sometimes it's making sure, say if someone, I'm a right sider, so if someone's serving at my right, to get my hips around instead of just kind of being lazy and waving my arms at it. So it really just depends on what the particular problem I'm trying to solve at the time is. But it'll really just be one thought that I'm working on, either getting my feet to the ball, getting my hips around, freezing the platform, backpedaling on deep serves and making sure that I'm getting my butt behind the ball. So it's just one major focus for that skill for the day. And anything beyond that, it's just too much. You're going to short circuit.
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree. If you try to make too many things happen, or you have a coach that tells you a million things at the same time, it just
It's crazy. I remember I was trying to just like work on my basic approach, and he was just like, all right, you gotta start with this foot, but then remember to be facing this direction, and then your arm back, you're cocking up, and you're doing this. I was like, what do I have to do? I was like, it's too many things. I'm a simpleton. Just give me one thing at a time.
Yeah, one thing at a time, and then you can sort of piece them together after a while and start putting them together. But yeah, you really need to take it. So I guess you had a lot of things for free since you had this athletic background. Like you said, you had things from moving and whatnot. But what do you feel has been your biggest problem in learning beach volleyball or getting to where you're now from when you started?
Good question. The biggest problem would be probably kind of the finer skills of the game. So judgment decisions, knowing when to hit a cut shot versus knowing when to swing. Or really, like, my arm swing was awful when I first started. It was like really hitchy, stiff. I mean, when I started playing, I weighed like 225 pounds, and I was like almost like a bodybuilder physique, which is totally dysfunctional for what you're trying to do with beach volleyball. So I had to kind of like reshape my body, and now I'm like 195 pounds and much leaner, and more built to last for 6 matches in a day on the sand if I need to. So I think it was just like fine tuning all of the other skills that I had from the sports and kind of carving it into what a beach volleyball player should be doing. And that's like decision making that needs to become almost subconscious. Like, you need to be able to feel the blocker in your line, not only feel that he's in your line, but how much of your line is he giving? Like, can you chop one under him? Do you want to go over him? Do you want to tool him? Do you want to do a baby line, deep line? And all these decisions need to be like in a snap, or you're not going to side out. So I think it's just, the hardest part was just getting the amount of reps where these decisions are almost on autopilot by the time I'm playing. And that's still something that I'm working on, because the higher level you go, the faster the game is, and the faster the game is, like, the faster your brain needs to work. And if you're thinking while you're playing, you're too slow. If you're in the air, you're like, I think Taylor is in the angle, I'm going to hit a cut. Oh, Taylor's there. And you just need to be able to run. Your brain's got to go on autopilot by the time you're playing. And that, I think, is a problem that can only be solved by getting the amount of repetitions, and not just repetitions in practice, but competing. Because there's no way to stimulate 13-12 in the third set, and you're receiving, and if you don't side out, now you're down 2 match points. That can only be something that you can simulate, like just the nerves, the adrenaline, the pressure, like the mental fraying that is going on in your brain. That's only something you can really simulate and work on by competing. And so it's just like, you work on and practice throughout the week and play every tournament you can until your brain starts to figure these things out on its own.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I mean, because I agree with what you said before about doing the reps in drills and whatnot, but I think some people misunderstand me and think that that's all I think you should do, but you definitely need the game reps also for the decisions and all of that. And like you need a lot of just how to deal with yourself mentally in the games and strategies and different players that you can play against and whatnot.
Yeah, absolutely. So like to answer your question, I don't think it was like a skill necessarily that was the hardest thing to come around. I think it was just like the mental framework of playing beach volleyball in competition and having these decisions just come to you without really thinking about it.
Okay. So the decision part, not the mental. I mean, golf is a very mental sport. You haven't had like pressure problems or.
Yeah, so I mean, golf. I honestly think that the sport that prepared me best for beach volleyball was golf, because you know when you're playing around the golf, you're golfing for 4 hours, but you're only playing golf for like 4 minutes. You know, all the other time is spent walking, looking at your shot, thinking about your shot, thinking about the bunker, thinking about the lake, thinking about the trees, thinking about the putt that's going to be a 6-foot downhill slider that if you miss, now you got an 8-footer coming back uphill. And so golf trains your brain more than any other sport. So coming out to the beach and that has helped me pick up the mental side so much. So I am so grateful for my dad getting me into golf. It's been clutch.
Yeah, I haven't played golf myself, but I played disc golf. And there was a summer, I think 2 or 3 summers ago, when I played way too much disc golf for feeling like I was a beach volleyball player that was taking the sport seriously. But basically, what I realized after a while was that I had every single shot you take is like a serve after a timeout, which is when people miss because they have time to think about things. I just realized after that summer, like, this is interesting. This is now easier.
Yeah.
Just to get that reset.
Yeah, it's a perfect comparison.
It's such a subtle skill, like how to not, because you have to think a little bit, but you can't think too much. You can't get lazy. You can't get stressed. I don't know. It's it's like trying to balance an egg on its.
I know, it's crazy.
Yeah, exactly. Do you feel like you see? Because you said about the decisions in attacking. Do you feel like you see the court when you like in your peripheral vision?
Yeah, my thing. So the offensive player generally sees the defense either by taking a big look at the defender or by feeling the blocker. So when I'm playing right side, which is my normal strong side, so I come in because I'm lefty, so I'm a little bit angled. So I can feel the blocker on my side. So I don't bother looking at the defender a whole lot, because if I can feel the blocker a little bit at my angle, then I know that like a quick line chop is going to be open. So I look more where the blocker is than the defender, because especially like blockers are bigger, they're easier to see and way easier to feel. And so if I can feel the blocker making an early move, then it makes my job as an offender really easy, because then I either just hit where the blocker is and just go over him, or I know that if he's in my line, then the defender's in the angle. And if the defender isn't picking up my swings very well, then I'm going to attack him instead. So that's where my vision mostly comes from. On the left side, I take more of a straight in approach. So I don't have that peripheral feel of the blocker. So then my decision making is based more on where the defender is.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's differently depending on which side you're on.
Yeah. And so my vision on the left is horrific, because I'm terrible at taking like a look and then finding the ball again. And so I really swing angle every time I'm on the left. So if I'm over there, that's what I'm doing, guys.
This is the kind of stuff you should tell everyone. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, because when you said like taking the decisions and knowing when to do what, I realized like when I do those things well, I feel like it happens so quickly that I don't have time to think about it. Like it's just somehow I know it's sometimes I talk about, if you have a glass on your kitchen not table, whatever, you happen to hit it and it goes towards the floor, and your body just somehow by itself grabs it, before hits the floor. Like it's almost like it's that part of the brain that's working also in attacking. It's just like, oh, here's some space, and then the hand just goes there, and you have no idea. It doesn't really feel like it was you doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's like one of the coolest feelings, is getting in a flow state like that, where things are just like, you're doing stuff that you're not even thinking about, and it's working, and your brain is just like on shut off and on autopilot. And it is awesome when that happens.
It is. It is, especially when you and your partner, like, there's this sync, like you both do things together and it works like that. It's
it's so cool.
What you live for.
Yeah.
That's cool. But yeah, I feel like, because I don't get into that when I'm in positions where I don't see the court with my peripheral vision. I think I'm the same as you. I see the blocker with my peripheral. But whenever shit's fucked up and behind me and whatnot, then I lose that.
Yeah. When in doubt, I mean, just go with whatever your best swing is. So if like you can't see anything, high deep angle will generally work.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Makes complete sense. All right, so this is a question that I'm super stoked for, because you're a special. Your brain is a special brain because you had so many guests on the podcast.
Yeah.
And you know, I think I've listened to. There was a time when I listened to every single episode. Then whatever happened, I got busy and I haven't listened to everyone, but maybe 70% of the episodes.
I appreciate it.
But you also have, conversations with people before and after. So, I mean, you talked to so many people. So I was like, what are the best things that you learned from the guests? Like, can I do a Google search in your brain, like, for the best fucking hacks that?
That's such a good question. So the absolute number one commonality across every single guest we've ever had is to compete as much as you can. I mean, that goes from Rafu to April to Phil to Piotr to Trevor, Nicolette Martin, like every single person we've ever had on the podcast. And we're like, if you had to give one piece of advice, every single person says, compete as much as you can. But also, you got to find a way to have fun doing it. Because I think when you look at the people who have had the longest careers in this sport and the most successful, I mean, they have absolutely loved this game. I mean, you look at the way Alisson approaches beach volleyball, and you can tell he has like this reverence for beach volleyball. Like it's beyond love. It's like he cherishes the sport. And when you look at the people who have success, and that's why I look at Kelly Clays, Sarah Sponsel, Kristen Nuss, Taryn Cloth, like they are so obsessed with beach volleyball in the healthiest way, where their identities aren't wrapped up in it. Like if they lose, they're not like, oh, well, I am just a terrible failure of a person. They're just like, all right, well, we lost. I'm going to go camping this weekend. But they just love the sport of beach volleyball. And I think that that's probably number one, is finding a way to have fun and enjoy the sport while you're competing and enjoying the journey. That's the biggest thing, is just having fun, enjoying the journey. Because like if you're miserable going to practice 5 days a week, you're not going to play for very long. You got to find a way to love doing sprints. You got to find a way to love passing 500 balls, setting balls, being out in the sun all day. You got to find a way to love 12-hour plane rides to Paris. It's just like once you find a way to enjoy the shittiest parts of this game, and then you get to play, it's just this gift from the heavens where you're just like, I just get to play beach volleyball today, and I don't have to put 250 pounds on my back and squat today. I just get to play, and it's amazing. And so every time you play a tournament, it's just this great gift, and you just like gratitude's a big commonality, which intertwines itself with joy and enjoying the process. Like if you are grateful for the fact that you get to go to the beach and you get to do something that people would pay to do on vacation, and you get to do it every day and live this healthy, amazing lifestyle outside with your friends, like that's that's the ticket right there. And it doesn't matter if you're a AA player or an AVP pro, like that's it. I mean, that's number one.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Do you enjoy competing? Are you competitive?
Oh, I love it. I love competing. And so I just read Phil Jackson's book, 11 Rings. I don't know if you've read that or heard of it. So he is really cool to see his mind, because he coached Kobe Bryant, obviously, with the Lakers, and he coached Michael Jordan with the Bulls. And so he was able to get like a really intimate look at both of them as they are competitors. And he said that they're two very different competitors. He said Michael Jordan competed in absolutely everything. Like if you were driving home, it was a race. If you were brushing your teeth, it was who could brush their teeth the hardest, you know? And then there was Kobe, who was solely focused on just competing in basketball. And after that, he didn't care who won or lost or whatever. Like if you were playing video games, like he didn't care, because it didn't have to do with basketball. And I'm more in Kobe's camp, where like I'm competitive. Like we play board games, like I want to win. But if I lose, I'm like, all right, whatever. Whereas my brothers, like if I play them in putt-putt and I beat them, you know, they're like breaking the putters in half and chucking them in the parking lot. And, you know, but if I lose, I'm like, all right, whatever, let's go get a beer. So when I'm playing beach volleyball, like I love competing. Competing is just like such a thrill, like the adrenaline rush, the chess match of like when to call the right play. I think it's just so fun. And I think it's so fun to be playing in a final with people watching and like chopping it up with the crowd and like all this stuff. I think it's just an absolute blast to compete.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. That's amazing. And it was always like that, or did you have to learn it?
Yeah, I think that I've always liked that with golf. So I know that I'm in trouble when I stop having fun competing. And with golf, like I would just get like so nervous before, and I like wouldn't enjoy it. And so I know that I'm like, when I don't enjoy competing, I'm on the edges of burnout, and that's when I need to kind of like take a time out and step back and do some other things for a little bit, like go backpacking for a couple days and do whatever. But when I don't enjoy competing, that's kind of a red flag for me to take a time out, which is good that I know that now. But yeah, for the most part, like I've always loved competing. I just love like the adrenaline. I love the focus that you get. It's kind of like, I don't know, you mentioned you ski and snowboard, but that like, it's hard to replicate that focus you get when you're skiing downhill and you're going like a little faster than you probably should. And you're like, if I fall, something could go pretty wrong here. And you get this level of focus that is just like next to none. And you're just like so in tune with the snow and where you're going. Same things with like surfing too. And that's the kind of focus I get from competing. And I think that's such a cool feeling to just be so dialed in and everything in the outside world is just gone. And you're just competing and you're in the moment and it's so fun.
That makes sense. Have you read Stealing Fire or Rise of Superman?
No, I have not.
No, and I haven't either. I've just sort of dabbled in them. But the guy says that the theory was something like that. He thinks that extreme sports evolve faster than other sports because of the focus that you get from having physical danger when you do the sports, which puts you in the state. And when you're in this state, you basically just have more creativity and learn things just faster. So he had looked at like how much has snowboarding evolved in 30 years versus how much has something else evolved, and it was like
oh, like I 1,000% believe that. Absolutely.
Yeah. Sometimes I'm like sometimes I have this mind like, what if beach volleyball was that you actually got physically hurt every time you hit a ball outside of the court? Like, what would that be like? Because that's kind of skateboarding, you know? You miss your puck.
I think we'd have a lot of people shooting line shots.
Probably, yeah. Probably. Anyway, what would you say? So for someone, do you know that? By the way, I need to say something. There's been 2 times I've been interacting with the Sandcast. Once was you probably don't know who it was. I sent a question to Phil about blocking like this because I just thought this weird idea.
Yeah,
that
I remember that.
Cover more width.
We were cracking up.
Probably a stupid idea. And then obviously I'm starting this podcast because I just like talking about like how to learn things and skills and whatnot. But what episodes, if someone likes my podcast but wants to go listen to Sandcast, but what, like wants the episodes that are most like where you guys just talk about a lot of technical things and what, like, you know, some of the episodes are stories, some of them are more, you know, which ones should someone go and listen to?
Oh, Read Pretty. No question. Read Pretty is like answer 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, that guy, if you want to talk about a guy who has just mastered the art of learning, it is Read Pretty. I mean, he is incredible. And he was so cool and so open with us about just like how he was going about changing from an indoor player to a beach player. I mean, he was on it. So I think Read Pretty, that's number one for sure. I mean, really technical, really logic, data driven. He's the one. As far as the others, Misty May was actually pretty good for that. Those two are the ones that jump off the bat right away as the kind of more technically driven podcast. But Read is like far and away number one if that's kind of the content you're looking for.
Interesting. I think I missed both of those episodes.
Reed, really enjoy Reed's. Reed's was great, and Misty is like so cool, like one of the coolest people I've ever met in my life. She's awesome.
Awesome. I'll take a listen and add those episodes to the show notes or whatever. One that I remember was back then I had no idea who he was, but it was this random guy that had played with Read Pretty, which is what's his name? Pink Hat, not Karch, but the new Karch.
Right. Troy Field.
Troy, exactly. Was it Troy that had played with Reed and he came onto your podcast afterwards and said what he had learned from Reed or something like that?
Yeah. So Troy has been on twice. The first time he was on is the one you're referencing. Troy played, I think, 3 Norsekas with Reed. I think they won 2 silvers and a bronze. And so Troy talks a lot about his experiences with Reed on that podcast, which was quite a bit ago that we had that one. That was 2 or 3.
It was.
Yeah.
I was, but I have a specific memory that it was very insightful. I was driving my scooter in Thailand and listening to it.
I love it. That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when you guys talked with Mark Burek, you talked a lot about blocking also, right?
Yeah. Well, Burek doesn't block. So I don't know how much blocking we talked. We talked about kind of the importance of adventuring with Burek. Burek's very technical because he's a coach and he has a great business, Better at Beach, which is designed specifically for people looking to get better at beach volleyball. And if your listeners have never heard of it, they should definitely check out his YouTube channel and website. It's just straight up called Better at Beach. And that's a great resource. So I don't know if we talk about a ton of technical stuff in that episode, but Burek has a wealth of resources.
Let's try talking about blocking in that one.
Try talks a lot about blocking throughout because, I mean, to listen to him talk about blocking in his hands and his feet, it's like taking blocking, like a blocking master's class. It's unreal picking that guy's brain.
Yeah. I also saw he had started a YouTube channel with at least one blocking tutorial, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's doing pretty well too. I mean, he's only put up like 4 videos and he's got like 1,500 subscribers. So he's a popular guy these days. The Olympics will do that to you.
Absolutely. Yeah. So happy he got this. Both the Olympics and now this weekend the Manhattan.
Huge. I'm stoked for him. I love that guy so dang much. Like, it's so cool to see after like all the, I mean, not even ups and downs, just straight up downs he's had for 2 years in a row, and then boom. I mean, they talk about you need mountains as goals, but the valleys they'll mature you and try. Like he grew up fast and bam, Olympics, Manhattan. He's just like, and he has this like beautiful family, like the cutest 2-year-old daughter. Like I'm so happy for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Was it one of the first episodes you guys made of like what had happened to him and his recovery and
Yeah,
wasn't able to play still and whatnot?
Our very first episode, I think, was Halloween of 2017. Was just with Try and him like totally checking out with his autoimmune disease and like where he was at. And now to see like the growth from then to now, I mean, it's night and day. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is. That's a fucking journey.
Yeah.
That is a journey. What would you say is your specialty in beach volleyball? What are you best at? What do you enjoy teaching? What do you think people teach wrong?
I love, I'm not really one to say like what people teach wrong because I think everyone learns so different, and like my wife and I, who's a phenomenal beach player, like we couldn't learn any different. So like when she tries to tell me something, I like it totally misses me. And when I try to tell her something, it like totally whiffs on her part. And it's not because like she's a bad coach. She's a great coach. She's a full-time assistant at Pepperdine. So I don't think anybody necessarily teaches things the wrong way. I think that everyone's just a different learner, so you just need to find the person who connects with you the right way. I mean, the skill that I take the most pride in is hand setting. It's literally the first thing I learned how to do, which people find surprising because it's supposed to be a difficult skill, but when you played golf, when you played baseball, when you played basketball and all these hand sports, like you learn how to get pretty good hands. And so hand setting is also the easiest skill to practice by yourself. Like I'll literally just toss the ball up with a bunch of spin and hand set in my house thousands of times a day, annoy Delaney to no end doing it because it's just like this fidget that I do now. I just set balls. So I think hand setting, I mean, there's no excuse for someone not to be a good hand setter because you can do it by yourself. And now like the refs don't call anything anymore, so you might as well just hand set. And so yeah, that's my number one. That's my special skill is just I have this hashtag on Instagram where it's just me just like running around and flailing, doing anything I can not to bump set. So I just never bump set. My goal in life is never bump set, put the hands on everything.
Yeah, I've seen some of those clips.
Oh yeah.
I love because I'm the same. I also love hand setting, but all the Phil Dahlhauser type of falling handsets and like just put your hands on everything.
Yeah,
it's just more active.
Platforms are for passing. That's it.
Exactly. How do you and your wife teach differently, or is there like two different learning styles, explanation styles, different analogies, different?
She's like really logic driven, and I'm more feel like I just learn by doing and just trial and error. And she sees the value in it, but she's like, well, why don't I just explain it in a way that takes out the error? And so, but I I learn by moving and doing and figuring it out on my own. And she follows directions, and she stays inside the box. And I'm just like, well, I'll just color wherever I want and see how the picture turns out. And if it turns out bad, then I'll just draw a new one, And so I think she's probably a more efficient learner. Whereas I'm more of just like, I'm just going to figure this out on my own. Like, no one ever taught me any skill in beach volleyball. I just kind of like watched video and tried it, and then watched video and compared it, and then tried it a different way. And I just kind of figured it out. So I'm more trial and error. She's like, she takes directions really well, whereas I'm awful at following directions. And I'm just like your standard stubborn, hard-headed guy. It's like, no, I'll do it my way. And then eventually I probably am doing exactly the way that Delaney would want it to be done. It just took me, 46 trials and errors to figure it out. And she just followed directions.
Makes sense. Yeah, but you just want to be in the trenches and try things out until.
I'm a doer.
Yeah, makes sense. So obviously I love having this podcast because I get to ask people what I wonder about. There was one episode where you talked about you having some blocking coach that had taught you a lot in blocking. Yeah. And obviously the selfish part of me is gonna go and ask, like, what does he teach? Also, I want to be very respectful. Like, some people don't want to talk about everything that they teach. Some people want
to. I'm an open book with that stuff. So Evie Matthews is probably the best coach I've ever had with beach. And so when I say that, like, no one ever really like taught me how, like, the finer skills, like I learned all the basics just kind of through trial and error, but then to get to a higher level, like with blocking, and just like, so Evie taught me like hand shape. Where, like, no one really thinks, like, if you're just a casual beach volleyball fan, you're like, oh, well, a blocker just like goes up and tries to be big. Mm-hmm. But there's so many things, like, you got to learn, like, when you're blocking angle, that you can't, I'm trying to stay in the screen here, like, you can't shape your hand like this, or it's just going to bounce off your hand and go out. Like, you need to shape it more like that, so when it hits your hands, it goes into the court. And so just little things like that, and how to run like a fake, like you're stepping in the angle and then you're jumping back line, and you're getting your hands and shaping them right, so you're blocking inside the court, and how to jump into the line and block angle, and how to do a late pull. And so it's just all, Evie just kind of like, we'll rep it out for like an hour, 2 hours, and just do all these different types of blocks and all these different types of things. Because I'm 6'4", which in beach volleyball world is pretty small for a blocker. And so I need to learn, like, how to be sneaky and how to make these really late, low moves and kind of trap the guy into hitting where I want. Or, like, my finest skill as a blocker is making a guy think that the bounce swing is open. I clean house when guys try to swing sharp angle or sharp line, because that's really the only thing that I can block. If you're a 6'7" guy and I'm blocking you, that's your fault. It's not something I'm doing. Like, you're just swinging too low. So I bait guys into those swings, which is people think the don't swing on their part is
like sharp down.
Right. Yeah. So you basically, it's just the art of making a swing look wide open, and then at the last second taking it away. And so that's the biggest thing I've been working on this year, is basically how to use my undersize as an advantage, rather than just like complaining and being like, oh, I'm too short to be a blocker, let's go play defense and be terrible at it. Instead of just using it as an advantage and just being sneaky and baiting guys to do things that I want.
That's an interesting perspective. So because I was gonna ask, when you bait someone, do you take the steps, and then jump straight up, or do you sort of lean over? But this almost sounds like you're doing almost like an extreme lean over, like, and you don't really care about getting high at all. Is that?
Yeah, for the most part. This is a benefit of me having the podcast, is that, I get to learn from a lot of the best to play the game. And so Phil Dahlhauser, for example, on his episode, he was like, it's pretty rare that guys are swinging a foot above the tape. You look at even Alisson, he hits the tape. Ricardo hits the tape. Oleg Stoyanovsky hits tape. And so if you think about it, you don't have to be that tall to steal a swing. Like, if this is the tape, all you need is this. You don't need to be way up, like elbow to the net. It's helpful. But so, like, I'm not really worried about getting super high off the block. I'm worried about more pressing over the net and getting into the angle I need and closing it off. So when he makes the mistake of bringing the swing down, that's my point. But if he swings high angle, does a great job 21 times in a row, then, like, good for him. But at the end of the day, no one does that. Everyone makes a mistake at some point, and so it's your job to capitalize when they do make the mistake.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense. Do you think a lot about blocking timing, like when you jump compared to the hitter?
All the time. I'm always habitually, I'm late. I'm chronically late as a blocker, which is something that I kind of need to fix, because I'm trying to bait them into a swing so much that I wait so long and go at the last second, that a lot of times I will still be going up when the ball hits me. And so figuring out the other hitter's timing is also a huge part of blocking. And you need to figure out when you go, because you can't go too early so they see you, but you can't go too late so they're just tooling you the whole time. So everyone has their arm swing's different. Do they swing on the way up? Do they swing on the way down? And so that's kind of the mental calculus you're doing as a blocker. You're just figuring out the proper way to time your block. And I think that the most common mistake I make is being too late, which I would rather be too late than too early. Because if you're too early, then you're selling yourself up, but you're also selling out your defender. Whereas if you're too late, maybe he'll hit a shot at your defender thinking that you are somewhere else. And so, the worst that happens when you're too late is that they tool you, which I think that isn't okay. I think that of all the mistakes to make as a blocker, I think that being late is the best of them.
Yeah. Sometimes if you're a little late, you can still get the soft touch, and then it kind of springs up, and the defender can take the ball.
Exactly.
And then you have to do something smart after that. It's because personally, I had to block a lot earlier because I'm shorter than you. I'm 6'2". I had a decent vertical, so often I still end up blocking if I play with someone shorter, even if I don't really want to. But one thing I realized is really like understanding I think this is a good idea to understand the tendency of a hitter. Are they someone that tends to hit early after they jump, or is it someone that tends to hit late, on their way down? And combine that with how far off the net they are, and that calculation combined with when you should jump, like compared to when they jump, if that makes sense.
Makes perfect.
Because once I started thinking like that, like I really started noticing how far off the net they are. I just started timing better my blocks.
Because that's a huge element of it.
I think before I was just like blindly jumping roughly at the same time as they jump, no matter how far off the net they were.
That happens all the time.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Cool. Is there anything? Has anyone ever interviewed you on Sandcast, or are you always?
When I came out with the book, we kind of talked about my story a little bit. So the book, We Were Kings, that came out, I want to say 2018. And so Try kind of led that interview. But for the most part, I love my role as being the interviewer. I love like talking to people about their story. And then I always do a write-up after, and I love picking their brains and just like hearing their journeys and like kind of what led them here, and what problem are they trying to solve and how are they solving it. I think that stuff's fascinating. So like me being the interviewer, I love that role. I just think it's so fun, and it's been such a blessing for me in my career to hear all these stories from all the greatest people. Like, this podcast has put me in the same room as the greatest people in the world at their craft. What better blessing can you ask for than just to be in the same airspace as that, and to learn their habits, their strategies, their disciplines. It's been an incredible ride, and way more than me and Try could have ever bargained for. We kind of winged it when we started the podcast. He's like, "Hey man, like I'm sick. I'm really good at beach volleyball. You're a journalist and you love beach volleyball. I think we'd be a good team." And then it's just turned into like such a magnificent ride so far, and it's just been such a blessing.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. So then my question is, you probably don't have this. Is there anything that you always wanted to like say to people, but you haven't really gotten the chance? I guess you write your articles, so maybe you get to express your thoughts that way.
Yeah, the writing is like my kind of like therapeutic outlet. My editor, he always asked me to write, whenever I go travel in the FIVB or whatever, he's always like, you should keep writing because people love reading this stuff. Because when I write, like I'm pretty brutally honest, whatever it is I'm going through at the time, like you're going to feel it with me, and I remember I wrote this story after Adam and I lost in the final round of the qualifier in Bulgaria. And this was at the end of like a 5-week trip in Europe, where we had been like Bulgaria to Russia. And then we spent 3 more weeks in Bulgaria. And, I just wrote about like my lead of the story was just like me sitting in this sauna, and I was just straight up like crying. I wasn't like sobbing. I was like, just like beat. I was just like kind of broken down, and I was like, man, this like is a shitty way to end like a cool trip. And like I missed home, missed my wife, I missed like this apartment, missed being able to make my own food, and like you know, I was very grateful for the trip and everything, but you do like, you hit this mental wall and you're just like, I just got to get home. And like, I wrote the story, you know, kind of detailing it like that. And the feedback that I got from a lot of the players was like, it's so cool that like you're opening up like that. Cause like, we're all feeling the same thing. And we all feel guilty, you know, anytime we complain about being tired or overwhelmed or burned out. Cause like we live like these incredibly blessed lives. Like we get to travel the world and it's our job. We get to play this game and meet all these amazing people and do all these incredible things. So like to acknowledge that it's a difficult thing to do feels strange, you know, because like there are way more difficult jobs, but there are parts of it that you're just like, damn it, like, should I just take a 9 to 5 and know what every day looks like, you know? And like we, as a collective beach volleyball player unit, we are so grateful for our jobs, but it is therapeutic to write about the difficulties that come up with it and how we navigate it. And, you know, that's like, I think my favorite part about writing and expressing all that is that the feedback from the players is always so genuine. And they're like, it's so cool to know that there's someone else that feels like this, you know, I'm feeling the same way. And it's cool for me too. Like, you know, I remember me and Adam, we beat Kame Schock and Theo Brunner in the country quota in Sochi. And, you know, me and Kame are pretty good friends, but you know, it always like, it's never a good feeling you have between each other after you lose in a country quota in freaking Russia. And Kame texted me after that story. He's like, bro, like that was awesome. Like, it's so cool to like hear someone else like say this side of the sport. So yeah, so the writing is kind of how I express myself in that sense. You know, I don't really need to put it out on the podcast all the time, especially because I do write like all the time. And so that's my outlet.
It's good to be real. Is there a way where like all of these articles are in the same place, or does one have to like scan your Instagram and find some links here and there? Or
for the most part, they're all at volleyballmag.com. So if you just like click on my name, you can find anything you want.
Okay, cool. Because I've read some of them, but probably not all of them. But yeah, they feel very genuine.
That's what I'm going for.
It's nice to read something that was written by someone who knows how to write.
I appreciate that.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Let's see how much. I have a few more questions here.
I have a couple more minutes, and then I have a hot yoga appointment that I got to be getting to.
Awesome. Awesome. Then I'll stay short. Is there, I stole this one from you guys. Is there anything that I should have asked for that you wish we would have talked about?
Oh, good question. No, I mean, I think that you did a great job. Just like, I love that your questions were very real. They're just like, when you investigate your own curiosities, it creates a much better conversational environment rather than like asking the questions you think you should ask. So you did a great job. You were like genuinely curious, and you're like, you asked good questions, and I had a great time chatting with you.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. Obviously, I'm just here like, getting to pick people's brains.
Yeah, the best podcast is the greatest job in the world.
Exactly. So that's what I'll do. So I also wanted to mention your books. I've read what is it called? The milkshakes one.
Volleyball shakes.
Yeah, that's a great one. I love that. I don't know if I put it in my recommended books yet, but I will. If I haven't yet, I'll check it up after this. But what about the We Were Kings book? That one I haven't read. I just downloaded the sample and read that, so I read a few pages of it.
You enjoy that one. So We Were Kings, I wrote in 2018. It just details. It features probably about 100 beach volleyball players and just like their journeys into beach volleyball. And it's funny, like, because, you know, at the time, you know, I did Sarah Hughes and Kelly Clays, and they were playing together, and they were just college kids. So it's funny to look back on it. But if you're a beach volleyball fan, I do think that you would enjoy We Were Kings, and I think that is some of the best writing I've done And that book is actually how me and Tri met, because Tri was the first interview I did for that book. And we talked for like an hour and a half, and I was like, damn, I was like one of the best players in the world. And he just like chatted with me for that long. So that book was fun. So We Were Kings and Volleyball for Milkshakes are the two books I have on beach volleyball.
That's awesome. So We Were Kings, is it kind of like a history book? Like you just read about people's stories and then you learn from that in a sense? You know,
the way I structured it was each chapter is a different stop on the AVP tour. And so and each features a different subset of players. And so like in Manhattan, you know, it's kind of a feature on like the legends of Manhattan and how big that tournament is. So that's more on the pro side. There's, I think, New York features all the Hawaiians, because that was, I think, Madison McKibben and Riley McKibben's first main draw. So I talk about them and Taylor and Trevor and Tri. You know, the last one I talk about how difficult it is to be a professional beach volleyball player living outside of California. And so I feature a lot of the guys who are trying to do it out of state. So it's a walk through the AVP season, using that as the structure to tell other people's stories.
Okay, that's a cool concept. I'll have to take the time and read that one too.
I appreciate it.
I love the milkshakes one. It was like just I love not education, but when it's like entertainment and education. What do you call it? Edutainment.
Yeah, it was fun. That was so fun to write. I loved it. I wrote
something that's nice to read.
Almost that entire book at the Moscow airport. I was stuck there for 24 hours, and so I just like drank a ton of coffee in a lounge and just like cranked it out.
Yeah. That's cool. All right. If you could choose, who would you want me to interview on the Learn Beach Volleyball Fast podcast? Who would you want to listen to on this podcast?
I mean, April's so cool and just amazing. If you can pick her brain, yeah. I mean, April Ross, that's a living legend right there, and just like one of the coolest people in sport. Can't say enough good things about April Ross.
Interesting. Cool. And since you know Tri way better than I do, how do I lure him onto being a guest here on my podcast?
I give you his contact. He's responsive on Instagram, so hit him up.
On Instagram? Awesome. Cool. What if someone listened to this and they want to contact you for some reason, whether they want you to be their coach or wants to listen to Sandcast or anything? How would you say?
This way, Instagram is at TramMew, TRAMMEW. That's the easiest way to get in touch. And if you want to follow on Sandcast, we're out there. Episodes every Wednesday, and we're doing our thing.
Awesome. Yeah. People should definitely listen to it. And I'll put the links to these episodes that we talked about in this episode in the show notes of this episode. Cool. Enjoy your hot yoga. Have you done that a lot?
I appreciate it. I love hot yoga. So I'm going to go open up those hips. Thank you so much for the time. Glad we could make it work, bud.
Yeah, thanks. Okay. Have a good day.
Have a great rest of the day.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
Okay, awesome. I hope you enjoyed the episode as much as I enjoyed making it. I also hope that you know that the Learn Beach Volleyball Fast project is not only a podcast, but also a YouTube channel with beach volleyball tutorials, as well as a Facebook group with like-minded people that also want to accelerate their beach volleyball careers. The YouTube channel is, I make the tutorials kind of in-depth, very analytical. I explain a lot why I teach what I teach, etc. not only like, oh, this is how you do it, but actually like, this is how you can do it because of this, or some people might want to do it this way because of this, etc. So you really get a sort of a more fuller understanding of the skills and what would be the best way for you to proceed, what techniques you should choose, what strategies you should use, etc., etc. When I started playing, I was looking for this sort of content and it didn't exist, and I was sort of frustrated, so I had to start figuring stuff out on my own. And then I started making these videos to help other people, and there has been a lot of people that have really enjoyed them. So if you haven't yet checked them out, they might help you too. Also, the Learn Beach Volleyball Fast project will also be online courses, which will be even more in-depth, and also coaching. So go check out the YouTube channel, subscribe to it, join the Facebook group, join the email list also. That's good in case shit crashes. And if there's any feedback for this episode that you would want to give me, I guess the easiest way is to use the YouTube comment section for this episode, or in the Facebook group, or you can even email me at alex@learnbeachvolleyballfast.com. I think that was it for this time. See you again soon in another episode or another video or whatever. I hope you get to practice some beach volleyball until then and maybe learn some new skills. Have fun.